Recording in progress.
Good afternoon and welcome to Millbrae City Council special meeting agenda for December 7th, 2023. We are starting at 12:01. City Clerk, could you please do roll call?
Of course, Mayor. Councilmember Pappen, Councilman Cahalan.
Here.
Councilmember Fung.
Here.
Vice Mayor Goodman.
Here.
Mayor Snyder.
Here.
4 members of the City Council are present.
And we are hopeful that Councilwoman Pappen is joining us.
As far as we know.
Okay, very good. If everyone who can stand, please join me in standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We're going to start with our land acknowledgement. The Millbrae City Council acknowledges that we occupy the unceded, ancestral, traditional, and contemporary homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We wish to pay our respects to the ancestors and relatives of the Ramaytush community and to affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples. We recognize that the Ramaytush Ohlone have lived in harmony with nature for millennia, and that to achieve a truly ecological, sustainable future for Millbrae, we must embrace indigenous, traditional, ecological knowledge in how we care for the city's lands, waters, and all of its peoples. We will continue to uplift and foster a meaningful relationship with the Ramaytush Ohlone community, and we encourage all to visit www.ramaytush.org to learn more about the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples. With that, we have a consent calendar item. If there's a motion, consent calendar. Item number 1, cancellation of regularly scheduled City Council meeting of December 26, 2023. Is there a motion?
Excuse me, isn't it public comment comes first usually?
There's no public comment on this agenda.
On consent, typically, if there is a public that want to consent about us not having our council meeting on December 26th, please join us. City Clerk, I have nothing in writing. Do you have anything?
Fine.
Closing. That's okay. No worries. Traditionally, the city of Millbrae has one regular meeting in December, and sometimes some special meetings like today. All right. Is there a motion to approve? All right, I'll make a motion.
Sorry, motion.
Thank you, Councilwoman Cahalan.
If I can just make one comment real quick. Normally, that's what we always do, cancel the second meeting in December because it's right in the holiday. I have no problem with it, but I think, first of all, it depends on how this meeting goes. You know, if everything goes well, then we can certainly do that. Perhaps it might be a good idea to defer that until we have to discuss the agenda item.
I think if we end up continuing today's agenda, we can set that at that time.
Okay, right, that's fine.
It would be a special council meeting, or it would go to the regular in January.
Okay, right, that's fine. I'll second the motion.
All right, thank you, Councilman. Further discussion? City Clerk, could you call the vote?
Councilmember Cahalan.
Aye.
Councilmember Fung.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Goodman.
Aye.
Mayor Snyder.
Aye.
The consent calendar passed by a vote of 4-0.
Thank you. Moving on to existing business. Item number 2, accept Environmental Justice Solutions Community Committee on Social Equity and Culture Inclusion report. City Manager, and hang tight, we'll have Councilwoman Pappen is joining us. Welcome, Councilwoman. We are just starting agenda item number 2. City Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon to you, members of the City Council. Tom Williams, City Manager. First and foremost, I would like to thank the City Council for agreeing to this special meeting this afternoon. The reason is to maintain the schedule set forth by EJ Solutions, our consultant, that you will hear their report here in a few minutes. For their first meeting of the Community Committee on Social Equity and Cultural Inclusion scheduled for December 10th. So before I hand it over to EJ Solutions for their report, I did send out a memo to all employees to garner interest in an internal employee equity committee that will also be part of this process. And so I just would like to take the opportunity to ask them to be here today so you can put a name with a face with our employees. So I'd like to introduce who those employees are that volunteered. So we have Mr. Lamont Mack, Elizabeth C., Justine Bleeker, Annabella Costa, Angelica Gonzalez, Eduardo Gonzalez, and Pixie Salgado from Recreation. So I'd like to thank our employees for stepping up and volunteering and being part of this process. I wanted to recognize them. So with that, Mayor, I would like to introduce representatives from EJ Solutions. And they have a report for the City Council to consider this afternoon. So I'd like to introduce Annabelle.
Good afternoon.
I'm sorry, Maribel.
Good afternoon,
Maribel.
council members, Millbrae residents. My name is Maribel Nzegu Tobias. As you know, I'm the founder and principal of Environmental Justice Solutions, and we're a consulting firm that supports the development of equitable and sustainable policies through meaningful community engagement. So the wonderful city of Millbrae has retained EJ Solutions to develop its first ever social equity plan. I'm excited to be here with you today to tell you about the awesome work that our team has been doing to kick off this planning process and to convene a committee of Millbrae community members to work alongside us to develop a social equity plan for the city of Millbrae. The Community Committee on Social Equity and Cultural Inclusion, or the Community Social Equity Committee for short, its purpose is to guide Millbrae through this strategic planning process and to enable EJ Solutions to host a truly community-driven planning process. The committee empowers Millbrae residents and workers and students to shape the policies that impact them and to develop solutions that can achieve measurable results and unequivocally improve the lives of community members in Millbrae. The aim of our community-driven process is to develop social equity solutions that are supported by the broader Millbrae community and that are wholeheartedly supported by this council. So today we ask that you accept our memorandum detailing our committee selection process and methodology, which is included in your staff report, and approve our recommendations for the creation of a temporary, single-purpose, ad hoc community social equity committee with a youth equity subcommittee. Next slide. So before I begin, I want to formally introduce you to the EJ Solutions team that will be working on behalf of Millbrae. While you haven't had a chance to meet everyone yet, over the course of next year, you'll get to know us all. On the team are meeting facilitators, interpreters and translators, outreach coordinators, data and GIS mapping experts, research and writing, AV production, and graphic design experts. We're all very excited to meet our community committee members and engage young people and get down to business. Next slide. So here's an overview of how this planning process will unfold. The committee will meet in non-public meetings for just over a year, sharing their local knowledge and expertise to guide development of each phase of the plan. They will also be learning more about social equity issues and current city policies in Millbrae. They will identify disparities, community needs and assets, and evaluate, and identify key performance indicators to monitor implementation. In addition, the committee will inherently bolster and improve existing outreach efforts and engage the broader community in discussion about social equity solutions. Throughout the duration of the committee planning process, we will host 4 public workshops and town halls to gather public input to shape and ratify the committee's progress. Our public outreach will be ongoing throughout the project, and we will also periodically disseminate online and paper surveys to collect broader community input. So there are 4 phases of plan development. During this first phase, which we are kicking off shortly, the committee will convene to gather baseline data about social equity needs and issues in Millbrae. We will host 1 public community workshop to share the results of this data collection and gather input on additional community needs and assets. All of the results from this phase will be compiled into a baseline report. The next phase is solutions development. Once community needs are identified, the committee will work to develop solutions that meet those needs and preserve or strengthen community assets. Again, we will host a public community workshop during this phase to gather feedback and input on the draft solutions. The next phase of the plan is the first draft. So the committee will oversee development of that first draft, and then we will post it online as well as host a public town hall meeting to discuss the first draft and to gather input. The final phase of the plan development will be EJ Solutions working alongside the committee to finalize the plan, develop those key performance indicators that I mentioned for implementation accountability. Again, the final draft will be published online for additional community feedback and review. We will also host 1 public town hall meeting at this phase to hear the final range of community input and gain support for the final plan. So, next slide. So the Community Social Equity Committee that we are putting together is structured this way. And we carried out an independent recruiting and nomination process to select the members of this committee, which I will lay out in detail in just a moment. The committee has 15 members, 3 from each district, and 5 alternates, 1 from each district. Its members represent themselves as individuals, not organizations, and they reflect the broad spectrum of diversity in Millbrae in terms of ages, types of households, issue perspectives, such as renters, homeowners, low-income, middle-income, and high-income earners, full-time versus part-time workers. The 15 committee members will meet roughly twice a month throughout 2024. EJ Solutions reserved a portion of its project budget to provide $50 per meeting to committee members. Unfortunately, the alternates will not receive compensation for attending meetings while they are alternates. However, we encourage them to do so and fully participate during the meetings, the sections of the meeting reserved for that purpose, in order to enhance their ability to seamlessly step in should a vacancy occur. As I mentioned earlier, the committee will transpire after the plan is adopted and EJ Solutions work here in Millbrae ends. After we leave, Millbrae will appoint a permanent social equity commission to oversee plan implementation. Next slide. So in September and October, EJ Solutions recruited committee members by tabling alongside city staff at the Millbrae Mid-Autumn Festival. We emailed and called community anchors. We posted on social media, posted flyers around Millbrae at businesses and community organizations. And we also worked with city staff to get our recruitment flyers on Millbrae's electronic billboard in Spanish and Chinese. So the Millbrae community rewarded our efforts, and we received a total of 74 applications in English, Spanish, and Chinese for the community committee. We were so delighted to see this enthusiastic support, and you know, the number of great applications actually made our job very difficult. It's one of the most difficult selection processes we've had to carry out to date. So next slide. The applicant pool reflected a truly diverse cross-section of the Millbrae community. And here's a snapshot of the diversity by the numbers. We had 34 homeowners and 34 renters who applied. We had one housing insecure person. As you can see, we actually had 29 of the 74 applicants be young people under the age of 18. We were just bowled away by the level of enthusiasm amongst the young people. We also were able to ensure that, the applicant pool is just pretty evenly divided between different diversity characteristics represented in Millbrae. So next slide. This slide lists the stakeholder groups and committees that EJ Solutions will collaborate with to develop Millbrae's social equity plan. So in addition to the community committee, we are recruiting and recommending an additional component of that committee, a youth equity subcommittee that is open to participation by all of the young people who applied to participate on the committee. Only a limited number of Millbrae youth could be selected to participate, but we didn't want to lose track of all the enthusiasm we saw among the young people. So while we can't offer members of the Youth Equity Subcommittee a stipend, we're offering them the unique opportunity to participate in community committee meetings as a youth subcommittee that can deliberate and weigh in on every step of the process. Young people have already begun accepting their nominations to the yes, and we're excited to work with them. In addition, you'll recall that I mentioned earlier that committee members represent themselves as individuals. However, we're not leaving out local and county organizations, agencies, and businesses. We're considering them vital stakeholders as well, and we will be in communication with them throughout every step of the plan. In fact, we have already been in communication with a broad list of Millbrae community anchors who helped us with outreach to really expand our reach. We will also be working with them throughout the plan and ask them to submit comments and writing at each phase of plan development. We included a list of all of the community anchors that we're currently working with in your staff report. And then finally, as the city manager mentioned, we have a city staff equity committee as well. They have volunteered to participate to advise EJ Solutions and the community committee and lead development of solutions in the sphere of the city's direct action, such as hiring, training, and retention policies. Again, we're excited to begin collaborating with them. Next slide. So now I'm going to briefly describe our selection process in greater detail. We mounted a qualitative and quantitative assessment of all of the applicants with a rigorous review process. We considered their district, their experiences in Millbrae, passion for social equity, and their overall diversity of perspectives. Next slide. So here are the 3 sets of criteria that we evaluated. In all categories, we strove for a balance of perspective from all places on the spectrum. So with regard to eligibility, all members must live, work, or study in Millbrae. Again, they serve in their individual capacity, and they cannot be currently serving on another city committee or commission. That was a real, that DQ'd some really strong candidates. However, membership on this committee does not disqualify them from later service on the Permanent Social Equity Commission. And we also considered at this stage their availability to participate in community committee meetings over the course of the year. Next slide. We also assessed qualitative criteria. We looked at, as I mentioned, their experiences in Millbrae, looking at things of like whether they're a member of a frontline community, what their experience working in Millbrae are, and whether they had significant work or volunteer experiences as well. We also assessed their collaboration skills and propensity and their passion for equity. And as I said, we sought a whole spectrum of perspectives, so it's not just the most passionate about equity that we wanted to see on the committee, but a whole range of perspectives. Next slide. And as I mentioned, the committee is very diverse, following your directive to pull from all walks of life to represent the rich character of Millbrae. Next slide. This next slide takes a look at all of the different diversity considerations that we assessed to make sure that we had a thoroughly diverse set of committee members. Next slide. So we believe the resulting mix of committee members reflects Millbrae's character. Unfortunately, some of the folks we originally selected were no longer able to participate at this time, but we have worked to ensure that the committee overall reflects Millbrae's diversity. You can see here that we have 2 non-English speakers on the committee. One is a monolingual Mandarin speaker, and the other is a monolingual Spanish speaker. So as I mentioned, we have translators and interpreters on our team. We will be providing simultaneous interpretation of all of our committee meetings. Next slide. So throughout the presentation today, you may have been noticing this image that's at the top of this slide. It's actually a logo that EJ Solutions created with the help of a graphic design student who hails from Millbrae. We will be using this logo to represent the community spirit of this social equity plan throughout the planning process. So in conclusion, the Millbrae community has come together, and we know that this process will help define Millbrae as a place where every resident, worker, business, student, and visitor has an opportunity to participate and thrive. So again, we ask that you accept our memorandum and approve our recommendation for the creation of a temporary single-purpose ad hoc community social equity committee with a youth equity subcommittee. Thank you, council members.
Thank you. Good presentation. Thank you to the subcommittee. I know that this has been a lot of work, and it has had its emotions on that. So I thank you for your service on that. Thank you to staff who also worked on that project, staff who are going to serve on our own internal equity commission, all of the applicants, all of them, and everybody who participated in the process for that. And again, thank you to you and to your team with EJ Solutions. With that, council, do you want to get council comments? Oh, okay. Hold on, just type. I'll call the city attorney. Do you want to get public comment first before our comments, or do you want comments, public comments? How would you like it?
Yeah, I think we should hear from legal first.
Okay, Mr. Conneran.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations. This looks like a wonderful process. Late yesterday, the city manager contacted me with a question about the consultant's desire to have this committee meet in a non-public fashion. And I advised him that that would be allowed if the committee is not formed by an official action of the council. And I understood it was an important consideration from the consultant that this committee have that ability to, I guess, be able to communicate frankly and not feel like they're under a microscope. Happy to support that. The action that I recommended to the city manager was that you approve their report, but that you make it very clear that you are not approving the membership or the formation of the committee. Otherwise, it would be a violation of the Brown Act for them to meet in anything other than a public setting. I know that may be a bit of disruption. I didn't hear about this until yesterday. So with that comment, hopefully that doesn't throw a wrench in what you're expecting to do. But unfortunately, that's just the way the law is. Happy to answer questions if you have.
Thank you, City Attorney. I have a couple of questions then. The committee wants to get the $50 stipend. If we don't officially adopt it, how would they get the $50 stipend?
I believe it's being paid through the consultant, and I don't think that's inconsistent with them being an ad hoc committee.
Okay, and I do understand it's kind of like being in a focus group where you want to feel safe and you want to be able to say things and not have to worry about language. And I just had my affirmative action training for the Bay Area Water Board, and there's a whole bunch of new components to it and language to learn how to use. And because I said, we might make mistakes, like saying, thank you, miss, or thank you, mister. There's now a new way to do it on that. So language is evolving on that. That was my one question. Staff, how do we feel about, so they're going to be the 4 town hall meetings and that public access. This is to give you that flexibility to be blunt with each other. Are we okay, staff?
I'm okay with it, and, I've talked to Maribel and consulted with the city attorney on the way the action should be. That's why the staff's recommendation is to simply accept Environmental Justice Solutions Community Committee on Social Equity and Cultural Inclusion report.
Okay, so council, before I go to public comment, the issue at hand is we're accepting or approving. So Councilwoman Pappen.
Well, just this aspect, right?
Yeah, just this aspect, then we'll get back to.
I really do think we should work with the consultant here if that's their desire. I think that's very important to get the results. And I do think it's important that the good part about this is the community, many of whom we don't even know. We don't want them influenced in any way. We really want them to be free about their discussions. So I would agree with on this part, the recommendation of the consultant that they be really free to do that. And I think we are covered because the proposal does have then community meetings thereafter. So I think that would really enhance the integrity of the overall project. So that would be my view, if other council members have a different one.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I see the Vice Mayor shaking his head, but any other council comments? Councilman Fung?
Yeah, I think fundamentally that's a great idea, although I would add to it that, we should probably have the staff liaison to work with the consultant throughout this process. It is, you're part of the extension working on behalf of the city of Millbrae, so I think someone within the administrations should have some sort of a liaison working with our consultant throughout this process as they try to facilitate the discussion, and our staff would just be assisting if needed on an as-needed basis.
So through the mayor, so we are prepared, and we have been doing that, and we'll continue to do it. That's why we have our employee committee, and certainly Mr. Eduardo Gonzalez is our project manager on this, and we'll continue with that collaboration and coordination with the EJ Solutions.
Excellent. Sounds good. Thank you.
I overheard Councilwoman Pappen. Are you comfortable with that, having staff in presence? Does it fit within the process and typical?
Well, sorry, if I may get a little further here, is we will not be attending some of the meetings because we've talked to Maribel and EJ Solutions. We don't want to have a staff member there to also intimidate the process. So we agree that it needs to be open and a safe place.
Okay.
However, there will be meetings where we will invite city staff, other community anchors to inform, educate, and participate in the discussion.
Okay. Councilman Cahalan? Councilman? So what I'm seeing is at least 3 of us, or all 5 of us, were open with that? We're not voting on this, we're just saying yeah. Okay. Moving on to that. Council, I have a couple of public comment slips before we go into discussion. Do you want to hear public comment first? Typically, that's what you all like. Okay. First up is Jess Hudson, followed by Michael Kelly, and you've got 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Jess Hudson. The City Council directive was to maintain a non-political selection process. On August 18th, I expressed to Mayor Schneider, who was acting in her role at the time, that I could no longer support her leadership based on her uncivil behavior, not her stance, on the Home Key project. In response, she yelled at me in front of others that she would destroy my career and stated, "You'll never get elected in this county now." She then proceeded to yell at my disabled trans child and belittle them, and has continued to intentionally misgender them and speak negatively about them and myself unabated for months, both professional and personal contacts. How can the residents and nominees be certain, given these incidents, that the nominee list provided to the subcommittee was not altered or influenced by the political and personal vendettas held by some members of this council? I respectfully request that the original recommendations provided by EJ Solutions, as well as any changes to that list, be shared to ameliorate concerns of politically motivated selections or rejections. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Kelly.
Hello, esteemed City Council, Michael Kelly, lived in Millbrae for many weeks. I'm a co-founder of the Anti-Racist Coalition. I wanted to start by sharing, we heard there's a staff report available. I didn't see that anywhere online. Hopefully the public has access to that for today's meeting. We saw the agenda, but it doesn't, there was nothing on the portal that I could find before this meeting. So wanted to request that so we can look at that. The other thing I wanted to do in my time, it was the Anti-Racist Coalition, our steering committee, which was 7 members at the time, and the now hundreds of members of Millbrae that asked for the Social Equity Commission to be formed. I want to acknowledge, without naming specific names, but it was not my idea. I kind of stepped forward to say, hey, I'm going to kind of present this to council, show up to meetings, ask for it. I do want to acknowledge that City Council came back and said, what would ARC want from this, from doing it? It's like, what are your top 2 or 3 items on your wish list? And one of our steering committee members said, we want the genie to say you don't have just 3 wishes, you get unlimited wishes. So forming a commission that can do this work moving forward was the plan, and it sounded like a really good way to go. We met with Councilwoman Pappen. I want to acknowledge her role. She put it forward on the agenda. That started this. That's great. It's appreciated. Since then, the relationship has not maintained its positive tone. But, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I want to acknowledge her role in helping get us to where we are now and making this move forward. It is something that I know a lot of comment was made around keeping this process apolitical, not bringing politics into it. So getting some transparency around that would be great. And just on behalf of Millbrae Anti-Racist Coalition, which now again has hundreds of members, 1,000 followers, both here and across the county and other places, to thank the City Council for the work you've done, for what we're about to do. And we would like to, just ensure that we have a great momentum moving forward. So that's my comments for today. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mary Bell.
Thank you. Anybody online?
Mayor, we have a speaker named Mar Hassan. Mar Hassan, if you could please accept the unmute.
Hello, Ellen. Mayor Schneider's behavior toward residents and community advocates is nothing close to equitable. She continually threatens to, in her words, destroy Jess Hudson's career, beginning in front of me and several hundred city residents at a home key community on August 18th, and made rude, degrading, and insulting comments to me personally on the same date and in private conversations at subsequent dates. To be clear, I am 16 years old. I'm trans, disabled, and poor, facing housing insecurity. Given those characteristics, I question and speak to equity if that is how she sees fit to behave as a public figure or as a human being. My mother and I hesitate to do errands in our own way because the man is clearly targeted origin actions from cited Millbrae residents to threaten and harass us. Mayor Schneider has demonstrated at every turn that she cannot represent Millbrae responsibly or with equity. I ask for the list of 15 nominees provided to subcommittee by EJ Solutions be made public, whether any changes to the list were made at any time, and by whom those changes were made.
Are you complete? Are you finished? All right, thank you. Next,
I didn't unmute her. I didn't.
City Clerk, do we have someone else? Do
No, there isn't.
you want me to let the clock run out?
No, Mayor, I think, I would advise that we pause
Okay.
it. I don't know if there's technical difficulty,
Okay.
so it looks like there's 129.
I think it was,
minute
yeah, it
29
was a little
remaining.
over 1:30.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mar, did you accidentally muted yourself? Because it looked like you're muted. You're still.
No, I finished my comment. Was the
Okay.
reception not going through?
All right, thank you.
Okay, City Clerk, do we have any other comments?
No.
All right, closing public comment, bringing it back to City Council. Questions, comments?
So Mayor, but if I may, I would like to just address the one members of the public comment. So the staff report was posted online at 11:57 yesterday pursuant to the law 24-hour notice. And it was distributed through all of our normal process. So it has been available online and distributed.
And just to clarify that, I get my council documents by going to the city's website, clicking on the new format, and then following down and clicking on specific agenda items. It does take a little bit of practice because it goes to an area, then I have to download it, and then I save it for any document that we get in City Council. So I'm sure there are other avenues, but I get mine directly from the website. All right. Questions and comments? Council? Councilwoman Pappen?
Thank you for all your hard work and effort. This looks very exciting here, and it's exciting to see a whole bunch of names I don't recognize at all. Because those are the people we really wanted to reach here. It was amazing to see how many youth applied. So that was very, very exciting. I do have two concerns. The anchor groups that you have,
Do you have a page number, Councilwoman?
page 9 through 11,
Thank you.
or community anchors, okay? Twofold. We do want to be apolitical here. And we greatly appreciate all the work that ARC has done within our community. But we have clearly shown, and I don't know why they're still on this list, that they gave political endorsements to the vice mayor and a council member on this dais here. They also, that process that they took was not open. It was biased and racially discriminatory in that they didn't interview every candidate. So I believe, again, I'm thankful for all the work that they've done, but they have crossed the line and become a political organization. Now, that's not to say that the members, the hundreds of members that were described today, have that, but to include them in this process, I think, does cross the political line. And we encourage individuals to be a part of this process, but it's clear that whether they've been defined as that or they've filed as that, they have become a political organization. And I just want this to be a pure system and process. So I don't think it's appropriate to have them on this anchor list. Secondarily, another group, sorry to say, the Housing Leadership Council of San Mateo County has been asked twice by the city of Millbrae to support 488 housing units, approved housing units with affordable housing that can be built. instead of supporting us, they have actually written letters against our project. They have taken things, they've disregarded the facts that our plan came before High-Speed Rail's plan, that High-Speed Rail has an alternative, and even at the second request, they have not supported the city or our housing. We are trying, that's an aspect of equity here, is that we're trying to do that. So would like to suggest that those two groups be removed from your anchor list. We can suggest Samaritan House or even Cora, some other groups to balance this out. And, I'd like to, we just want to keep this as pure as possible in the process. Now, those are the only two I see on here that I think are, again, one has crossed the political line. The other is really just not supportive of the city and their decision-making here. So I'm interested in comments from the rest of the council on that.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
May I also respond, or?
Please,
Okay. So
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
you wanted to
I asked
respond.
if I can respond.
Oh, please.
Yes, okay. So with respect to community anchors, our purpose is to learn from folks who work in Millbrae about their perspectives and beliefs. Our purpose is not to accept their opinions wholesale, but to be informed that their opinions exist and to broadly understand the stakeholders that are in Millbrae. And so the community anchors will just be submitting public comments on plan processes and will just be helping us with outreach. So they're not going to be directly having a say on anything that the committee does unless they're sharing information with us. And so, we also have listed on here Millbrae City committees and commissions. We're not seeing this process of reaching out as a political process, but more so as a community engagement process. So we want to engage all of the stakeholders in Millbrae, whether they agree with us or not. So that's our perspective on why this community anchor list is so broad, and we hope to continue broadening it. We will include the folks that you listed, any other folks that you think are doing work in the city of Millbrae that we should engage and understand their perspective. Please do let us know.
I thank you for your comments there. I do understand what you're trying to get at here. Racism is not a pick and choose aspect. It needs to be anti-racism all across the board. So that was my concern with ARC and their actions. And again, I think this is just the leadership there. I think, they have added to the community greatly. So as I understood it, the city is not supposed to be actually working with political groups. So where does that fall as far as city manager and the city attorney? Because this becomes, we have invested $200,000 in this process. So I think it's just a fine line. I understand, and I really appreciate the fact you want to be all-inclusive here, but that line has been crossed, and I don't believe we can work with a political group. So
Can I try to help you, coming from my Sierra Club background? So on the list, which is lovely, and as somebody who had to change laws, having a big group of people to reach out to have mailing lists and access to members who is an important part of the process. So I hear what you're saying, Councilwoman. Depending on an organization's structure, whether it's a C3, C4, C6, has different meanings. All of them can do a small portion of political, regardless of what their category is. It's what percentage of their time, or if they have paid staff, what percentage of their staff. So me personally, I don't have a problem seeing ARC. I have the same concerns that you have with Housing Leadership Council when it went out of its way to try to make our housing element fail on that one. I mean, that was a step beyond just coming and commenting. My comments, Councilwoman, I'm a little bit different with you. I'm okay with having the groups on here. Maybe we need a lead in on that, but all groups, I mean, straightest, the groups that endorse are C4s.
Again,
You know, this is not that, but they can still do education, they can still come in and communicate, and government works with them all the time.
respectfully, Madam Mayor, as I noted, anti-racism is anti-racism. And the actions of ARC in not opening their process to all the candidates or purposely excluding an Asian candidate, you cannot selectively be anti-racist when it suits you. So that is the process here. And we have clearly stated that none of these other groups have given political endorsements. So they've just crossed the line at that level. And I don't believe the city should be, again, we have clearly said this is supposed to be an apolitical process. And that is, they've become political. I'm sorry. That's just the facts.
Before I have the Vice Mayor go, point of clarification, we're accepting the report. And Councilman, you want a name removed in order to accept the report?
Yes.
Okay, just getting clarification on process. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I would just like to add that, hello? Yeah, I would just like to add that that's not the only group that's endorsed. SEIU is a union group that has endorsed, and so they're on here, and I think rightfully they're on here. But I'd like to also add that I was never invited to speak with ARC. I have never been interviewed by ARC. I assumed that it was the interview that took place in this room of all candidates that helped them make their decision. If I'm wrong, they can correct us. And so as far as making assumptions that somehow there was an exclusion, I don't see that. I do believe that, my only words outward to the community as a whole took place here in this room when all candidates were invited to speak and individuals were able to make their decision based on that. And so there was no invitation for me to speak to ARC directly. There was no application process for me to fill out to be approved or endorsed by ARC. I just want to be able to make that clear. But I do want us to focus on the work. I think we should focus on what was just said here, regardless of what we may bring to the table, whether it's our history, our baggage, that we allow the professionals to do their job. And if they're saying we are not going to take any individual, any of our community members when they come or they're invited for their opinion, we're not going to take it as a gospel 100%. We're going to listen, we're going to critique it, and we're going to have critical conversations about the issues that face Millbrae, and then we're going to move forward. And so if we focus on that, I think we can definitely accept this recommendation in this report.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Just Councilman Cahalan and then Councilman Phil.
Yes, thank you so much for this wonderful report and process. I will also say that I myself was not invited to any ARC interviews or application. I held several community meetings and was in the forum as well. When I look at this process of how thorough the outreach was, the diversity of the applicants, the diversity of who was selected, the thoroughness of looking at all the organizations involved in our community. And as you mentioned, Maribel, we all have different relationships, connections, agreements, or maybe even disagreements with the organizations, and that it's important to have all of the organizations represented. And with that thoroughness, one voice doesn't have more of a voice or more power in the process. It's giving all of our community groups an opportunity to have a voice. And if we're talking about equity in our city, to ask for certain groups, even the union group, if we were to ask them to step back because they've made endorsements, I think it goes against equity to take away the voice, for us to request to take away the voice of groups in our community. I am very excited about the staff committee and the youth committee, also very impressed by the number of youth that stepped up and want to be involved, our future leaders. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Fung.
Hi, Maribel. This is an important process, and we want to make sure we get it right because this is going to set us up for success. That's the goal here. So on the discussion of this politicalness of it, and I think, if I may, I think we're all agreed that this needs to be a non-political process, correct? I'm seeing a nod here. Okay, good. So at least we get this as a basis, as a baseline agreement. Now, we can define a question. As far as the community anchors, which is the center of the discussion here, how is the outreach going to be done? How are they providing their comments? How is the engagement going to be? If you can speak to that for a bit.
Sure. So we have been in email and telephone communication with different community anchors since we started this project in August. And we sent out the email to everyone, followed up with phone calls. We've spoken at some of their meetings now to inform them of what's going on and ask for their support in outreach. So we will continue that process of emailing them to let them know what's going on and that we are requesting their input. We can meet with them one-on-one or, speak to them on the phone. So we're just trying to gather as much input and data as we can, and we have been doing that already. Yeah, we've spoken to a very large number of these groups, and in fact, sorry, I'm just trying to look at some of the folks who helped us reach elders, the self-help for the elderly. We reached high school students by going through the Mills High parent-teacher group. So we've been in communication with most of these groups already, and we will just continue to keep them informed by email and social media, et cetera.
Okay, so that sounds good. On the topic of, the politicalness of this types of communications, I think we can, first of all, define what is political action so that everybody is clear of whether something is political or not. And in my opinion, and legal can check on it, Michael, we'll give you a chance, I see your hands up. A political endorsement, to me, it's a political action that has been issued on behalf of a certain organization, right? And I'm not going to name names here, but there's probably more than one organization that has done that, okay? So I will say, in order for us to stay clear and create that safe space, Maribel, that you keep discussing, and try to keep a meeting where everybody can have a frank discussion and keep the conversation as candid as possible, right? We want to make sure this environment is as safe as it can possibly be. So at this point in time, I would say we need to keep this as apolitical in terms of that line drawn, right? As clear and as safe as it can be, just so that as we conceive this group and conceive these basic ideas so that we can achieve the goal that we set out to do, which everybody agreed on a moment ago, that needs to be non-political.
Yes. So just to respond to that, EJ Solutions is the plan writer alongside the community committee, And EJ Solutions is hearing from the public in a community engagement process, so everyone is a stakeholder that we should be hearing from to help us shape our plan. And so the process is they'll speak to us, we take what we hear from them, we
Right.
apply it.
Right.
But it's not a political, there's no political process involved. We're the filter, the buck stops here. You will never know who said what to us unless it's in a public comment. And so our deliberations are the sacred core of this process, and we need that information to help us make good decisions. So that's the, non-public part of what's going on is we need to deliberate and learn about Millbrae in order to be experts about this community. And that's what we want to do. By the end of this year, EJ Solutions will be an expert in the Millbrae community. So that's really what we want to do for you.
Councilman Cahalan, I'm sorry, Mr. Fung.
It's okay. We'll follow up later.
I think for us to just make it really clear and for the public, these community organizations, they're not a member of the committee. They do not get a vote. No. They simply, we send out outreach. We're doing a survey. We send them an email. We're having a community meeting or a town hall. And their staff or members may complete a survey or make a phone call to provide input or attend the meeting. So if we're saying we want an organization not on this list, are we saying we're not, that it's not a vote and it's not membership? We're arguing, to say we don't want them to get an email that we're doing a survey or that you're invited? Or does that mean that everyone that's a part of that organization doesn't get to have any voice in any part of this project? Like, how are we have to understand what the involvement actually is before we're deciding whether to remove them from the list and what that means for people's participation. Does that make sense? So if it's not a vote and it's not membership, and we want to make a big deal to take their name off the list, then what's that mean if you're someone who lives and is a part of Millbrae and wants to go to a town hall meeting or give input?
Thank you, Councilwoman. We are at 12:58 in the middle of the day, just having a time check here. Councilwoman Cahalan, I appreciate exactly what you said. This is just a means of getting input. It is not that there are actually some groups, and I apologize, I could have gotten them to you. But this shows completely how here in North County, we are lacking of environmental groups, including the Sierra Club, which does endorse, but that's their C4 side, not their C3 side. So I would love to hear, because we could argue this, and I'm at the point of saying, do we have 3 votes to accept the report, although I think we have more stuff to talk about, based on the list of who you're going to do outreach to. This is simply outreach. And I understand the past, and we've kind of heard it all here. But my point is, well, I'll come back with some of the environmental group because, for example, Menlo Park has a great amount of environmental groups. And with their advocacy, they were able to get funding from the state to help low-income households go all electric, which removes gas from their homes, which makes their homes safer. And it is a problem here in North County, based on my 40-plus years in the field, that we don't have the non-governmental organizations here that are so prevalent in Berkeley and Oakland or in the greater Palo Alto, Menlo Park, Mountain View area. And it makes it harder to fight for the environment. And I am apologizing that I didn't get you those groups. I'm thinking specifically of the Sierra Club's Sustainable Land Use Committee, and I will announce right now that the city of Millbrae hopefully will be a partner with Chabot College and CSM in what's called Community Climate Partnership. It is all entirely for environmental justice. It's to help college students get real-world practical experience working on real-world climate change. And I'm really hoping they're going to help us on the East Side Specific Plan. It's beautiful that we're bringing in yet another environmental education community on that.
Madam Mayor, please.
So I'm going to get my time in here too. So I think of this as a flexible list. It's going to adapt, and it's a way to reach people, but not to exclude people. Councilwoman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The distinction, for just a final note here, is open, transparent, and inclusive. And for ARC, one of the founding members was the vice mayor's campaign manager and other activities here. We can go ahead with this process, but inclusivity in any political endorsements, open and transparent, I think that's really the huge distinction between SCIU, United Health, I think it's not United here, local, I think that's a little typo on the front. But that's the point that I'm trying to make here. And secondarily, the Housing Leadership Council has actively worked against our city. So I do think, don't waste time, shall we say, with that when you can get other resources that will hopefully work with the city and your efforts here. So we can move ahead here. I would like to, but we need to stay apolitical in this process. We do want to give you whatever you need to succeed. So with that, I would just like to vote to remove the Housing Leadership Council for actions that have clearly been counter to Millbrae's efforts on many, many fronts. You will find, and we will get you other groups along those lines that have been supportive and will work with you on that. So if we can, I have one other aspect here before the report goes on. The final plan. And this is page 3, your last paragraph there on number 4. It's almost as if you're suggesting or trying to influence an outcome by saying to convene a permanent social equity commission to oversee. So I think this was proposed in such a way that recommendations would be made, whatever your committee comes up with, whatever, that I don't want to foresee or conclude for the committee. We're hoping that this is such that the recommendations are made to the city council and to the community before we jump to a permanent committee. Now, I've seen in other cities, sometimes the committee goes through and they have just a specific focus on what they would like to accomplish. So I would ask that we just altered this last paragraph to say that the recommendations of the committee would be presented to the city council and the public, and then whatever, I don't know what they're going to recommend, but I don't want to be so almost suggestive as to try to influence that. Is that all right?
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
I'm sorry, Mr. Conneran. My apologies.
Very
Mr.
sorry.
Conneran.
Two things, actually, or three things. One, apropos of Councilmember Pappin's statement, I mean, we would need to modify the municipal code to add a commission. So there would be a very clear action that the council would need to take if that is indeed what the implementation is going to be. I'm very sorry. I have another client meeting. I squeezed this meeting in and I have to leave. I did want to just make this final recommendation as I kind of repeating what I said before. When you do finally act on voting, act to vote on this recommendation, I want it to be very clear that you are not creating the committee and you're not approving the membership. They're simply approving the report.
Will there be?
Or accepting the report. I'm sorry.
Will there be counsel standing in for you?
No, Joan is also busy. This was the last minute. I'm sorry, I have other meetings. If Tom has a specific question, he could text me and I can respond to him. Very sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Conneran. Who do I have? Councilman Fung. We've got Councilwoman Pappin's kind of a motion, but we're not really voting today So I'm not quite sure how to handle that specifically. Go ahead, Councilman Fung.
Let me try to bring it around here, Ms. Maribel. Is there elements within your discussion with these anchor group that cannot be made public?
No, we are asking them for their stated opinions on policies that they would have already made public themselves, perhaps. And we're asking them to submit comments in writing when they do have them.
So I'll be comfortable, including leaving Housing Leadership Council even, because we want to bring people along. I understand they have not been as collaborative as we'd like them to, but part of it is to bring people along as well in these processes. These are opportunities. This is an opportunity to be more inclusive, to work with people. Now, the request I have in order to move this forward is to include everybody on this list with the understanding that their comment to be written and be public, available. So as to speak to the transparency aspects of it, right? And if there is any portion of the comment that's political in nature, at least the public gets to see and review it, right? So that way, there is public scrutiny on all of this. And that would help sort of cleanse the process of that and also create that safe space for you and the group to continue to look at all these comment, insanity, and in a way that would be positive and helpful moving forward. Is that something that, Maribel, you think you can work with those requests?
Yes, that's essentially what we are proposing, that we would request that if they had comments, they be submitted in writing.
In writing and be open to the public, available for public inspection.
Yes, public comments.
Perfect,
Yes.
thank you.
Councilwoman Cahalan, go ahead.
Is that just for organizational statements, or is that for all individuals' input as well?
What my proposal and request a moment ago was in regards to the communication with the identified community anchors that we have been in discussion of, that we want to make sure the politicalness portion of that to be eliminated. But if we want to be inclusive, then let's just make sure they're transparent at least, because they should not and cannot be hid from the public, right? I mean, all comments should be available for public inspections, and so, that transparency is the best way to keep this process as honest as possible. If that makes sense.
Yep. No, I just wanted to.
To require one group to do something that it doesn't
I
do,
said
just because they
I said everybody.
preemptively endorse.
I said everybody. All
Everybody,
groups.
okay, everybody, okay, thank you. Councilwoman.
And then for individual members of the community who are not, employees or official representatives of an organization and want to submit input, is their comments need to be in writing and public as well? And the only reason I ask that, as organizations, that public involvement, I completely understand and having it public. But I think as a community, as we work towards equity, it takes a lot of vulnerability for people to speak up and share, where they don't feel heard, where they've been hurt. I think we all know that, hate crimes in Millbrae are underreported, right? People don't always, in general, people aren't calling our police department, things like that. I think if we really, truly want involvement and honest input from the community, I'm concerned that if we ask individuals on their own outside of an organization to say they'd have their comments public, that we might not get as much input. So I would just put that out there.
My understanding of the process is the committee will meet in a safe space. And that you might be inviting public members into that. So you're saying in this private space, would they have to write down their stuff? Because as soon as they come to one of the town halls, it's public, it's going to be on tape. So really, it's that.
In the private space, those are our private deliberations, so that does
So
not have to be
let's just
made public.
clarification. Are we okay that in a private space, outside groups have to put their comments in writing as opposed to being able to say it and we write down what they say?
Well,
Because that can be two different things.
my understanding is when they meet privately, outside group do not participate in these meetings, right? EJ Solution will solicit comments and suggestions from these anchor groups in writing, which is publicly available for inspection purposes, as you scrutinize and take in comments publicly, right? Where you will take these comments and process all of it and then have your private meeting with these 15 members, correct?
Correct.
And the groups will not be part of those discussions within the private setting, correct?
No, not unless we specifically invited them there for the purpose of informing us while we made a decision. So sometimes, like this, let's say the sheriff's department,
Right.
We're talking about public safety. The committee members might want a member of the sheriff's department there to inform them and educate them. And so we would invite them to our committee deliberations.
Make sense? Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor,
Yeah, are we done on this issue? Because
are we done? Okay,
All right.
everybody's comfortable?
okay.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, so in the spirit of transparency and integrity of this process, I have a number of questions that I'd love to be able to get through without interruption. I do respect everyone's time for being here, but first and foremost, I want to thank all of those that put their names forward to be a part of this process, for their courage and caring of our community. So thank you. I have a couple questions for the city manager and or staff who would ever like to answer. And I'd ask you just to humor me and, answer the questions, please. First question is, there was a subcommittee of council members created with the approval of council, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. That committee was then created to be the voice of the council and to act as the legal brown rep of the council to work with staff and EJ Solutions.
I don't know if that is exactly correct.
Well, when I say act as brown, I'm meaning that there's 2 members, it's not 3 members of the subcommittee, correct?
2 members to provide recommendations and advisory
Yeah.
to the full.
If there were 3, that would mean that we'd have to publicly announce that meeting for the purposes of transparency.
Correct.
At a meeting earlier this week, number 1, a list of names were recommended, correct?
What meeting?
The subcommittee meeting.
We don't know that.
And that's why I'm asking the city manager.
Yeah, they were brought forth
Yes.
by EJ Solutions to the subcommittee.
Okay. Were there any changes suggested through any deliberation of the 2 council members at time? If so, were they?
Yes. There was one change regarding a candidate that was appointed to the Planning Commission. And so based on the direction of the council, that person was removed.
Thank you. As the meeting concluded, were there any concerns, or was there a consensus, made upon the 2 council members?
No, there was no consensus.
I mean, did we agree? Did the subcommittee agree that we would move forward with the names?
That's a good question. I'll refer to the subcommittee. There was not a formal.
Was there a suggestion that the names be changed, or did we say we're okay with the names to move forward on the agenda?
Well, there was.
And we can ask our consultant if that's
Sure,
the
go
case.
ahead.
Were you under the direction of the subcommittee that the names that we finished the meeting on were appropriate to move forward?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Were you satisfied with those names at that moment?
Yes.
And I asked my colleague, were we satisfied with those names that were presented?
The first time I get to see a list was during the meeting.
Right.
That was the first moment at which I get to see those names. And a list of
Likewise.
20 names,
Right.
right? And so it does take me a while to reflect upon even reading because I was paying attention to Maribel's deliberation at the time, right? So I have not concluded, and I believe this is the time and the venue at which we discuss.
Right, if we wanted to make changes.
If we want to make any sort of finalizations and decision upon how this list to be generated and what folks to be included.
Correct.
In this ad hoc committee.
Thank you. At a prior meeting, there was comments that were made by staff that the recommendations brought forward was a take it or leave it. Am I correct? Like when the recommendations came before us, that we would get a take it or leave it list of individuals.
No, I will never bring anything to the council that's a take it or leave it. The council always has a discretion, and that's why we're here today.
No, I understand that, but the recommendation list would not be individual, it wouldn't be an individual, here, this person won, do we want to approve this person? It would be a full list that would be on that list, correct?
No,
I mean, we have it on recording, so that's fine. If you want to say no, that's perfectly fine.
well,
It's recorded.
we can pause, continue, and I
No, that's fine.
the record, but
If-
if I may ask your
Okay.
question, because I appreciate where you're going,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll answer any question. But the fact of the matter is, there was no vote, official vote of the
Right.
subcommittee. And the council, the reason why we're here today.
That's not my point, well, the question.
My point is, Vice Mayor, and if
I get that, but when I'm going to ask a question that will allow for you to answer it.
Vice
You're
Mayor,
answering a question that I
Vice
didn't
Mayor.
answer.
No, but what I'm trying to
Vice Mayor, let him
describe is
finish.
the process of which you're asking me questions, and I want to be crystal clear that, as Mr. Funk stated, this is the proper time and place. So that's why we're having.
And I've already
The
concluded
direction-
that that's appropriate.
The direction of the council was not EJ Solutions, go do a list and go out and implement. It was
Right.
to bring it back to the.
And I said I agree with that already. And that's why I said I'd prefer to move on for the sake of time.
Sure.
Thank you. Is the current list of recommendations consistent with the list that the subcommittee looked at when we met earlier this week?
Some people were unable to participate, so we did have to make some substitutions.
And that's the only reason that the names were, that there were alterations on the list, was because individuals said that they could no longer participate?
That's the primary consideration that we
Okay.
considered.
And so the list was changed, or that's the official response, that every individual that was on the list that was presented to us earlier this week was communicated to, and then they themselves asked to not be on the list because they couldn't participate.
So at the time that we met with you, we were still finalizing the list, and we had not sent out invitations to any participants at that time.
But you just said, and again, just for my clarification of understanding, you said that individuals, the list was changed because individuals said they couldn't serve.
That is correct.
How do you get to that point if you didn't communicate to them?
So we spoke to you on Monday. We finalized the list on Tuesday, and at the end of the day on Tuesday, we sent out the invitations to everyone that was on our list at that time.
On the original list that we saw?
That was on our list at that time. I can't say whether or not there were changes at that time.
Vice Mayor.
My concern is the list changing prior or after we met.
Correct.
And if that list changed and had some type of input from any other council member, that triggers a Brown Act violation. And so I'm asking specifically, did you communicate the list of individuals that we spoke, that we said, hey, this is a list moving forward? And if so, did they at that point say, I cannot serve? Or were you given individuals' names to remove off that list? And that means you or the city manager.
Let me address your issue.
Yeah.
Because beating around the bush.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm
So
trying
First of
to,
all, there's no Brown Act violation.
well, that's,
There's no,
Right.
I'm asking.
We can have that investigated.
Right, and we will.
I'm happy to have that, but I can assure you there's no Brown Act. This is a special meeting of the city council to adopt the report. And it's not final until the council takes a final
I
action.
understand that.
So this is the action of the city council. This is the Brown Act meeting. Now, if it's a work in progress and things change and emerge, which they do all the time.
And all I'm asking is, did it include another council member at any point?
we
Did the
received-
changing of the list include conversations with any other council member?
Yeah, as you know.
Because I was told that it was.
Correct, by
And,
me, and-
right, and so if that was, that's what I'm asking you to state publicly, please.
Correct, and I told you that I could not discuss it with you because it would be a Brown Act violation.
Right, and so now I'm asking you publicly, can you please explain
Correct.
how a third council member was involved in an item that is on the agenda that we all knew that we would act upon and provided some deliberation that changed the process?
Yeah, so a third council member, in that definition, was not involved. There's input.
Who was that third individual?
Well, let me, if I may.
Mhm.
So as we were reaching out to council members for this meeting, the mayor, other council members, to see if they were available for this special meeting, of course, there's inquiries of council members.
Mhm.
What's the purpose of the special meeting? What's it about? What's the information? It's all public information. So if anybody was to do a PRA request or ask for the draft list, that's available to the public. And
Right.
We will supply it.
Well, that's what I'm asking. We're publicly in the spirit of transparency.
Right.
I'm asking at what point was that list changed? Was it changed after a conversation with a third council member, or was it made prior to that conversation?
So several members brought to my attention individually, 2 applicants that had issues that,
So that was presented
one candidate.
prior to the list, and that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
one
So the
candidate-
list was not made public until after these individuals told you. So some information was given to them.
Well, so one member in a commission
Mhm.
brought to my attention that somebody made an ageist comment to her that was an applicant. So I provided that information to EJ Solutions. Another applicant on the list that was brought to my attention that made threatening comments to one of our elected officials and to staff. And so I brought that to EJ Solutions. I didn't know that until we started discussing and polling council members for this meeting.
Right.
So that's when it was brought to my attention. That's when I brought it to EJ Solutions' attention.
So.
And again, the objective that we're trying to achieve is, again.
I don't want to
fast track-
disrupt,
fast
I don't
track.
want to disrupt the objective, but I do want to make sure that we're mindful of what transparency is and what transparency isn't. And so if we had a list, if the subcommittee had a list of individuals and the charge was, hey, go ahead and call these individuals, let them know there will be a meeting on Sunday, and the council will ratify these members on Thursday, go at it, and then somehow council members are aware of what that recommendation is before the agenda is even made public. And then their influence is allowed to change what that public list looks like. That should be transparent as possible. And so if you're saying that there's two council members additional, other than myself and Councilmember Fung, that's a concern for me. Because that means there was a serial meeting where deliberation was done. And we'll leave that for the courts to decide whether a violation was broken or not, or made. But we have to be transparent in this process, and the integrity of this process
So, Vice
has
Mayor,
to, can I finish my comment?
Yeah, but then.
The integrity of this process has to be upheld, because we cannot continue to conduct ourselves in a manner that allows individuals to change the process that's convenient for them. If this was a place for that conversation to happen publicly and for us to critique that process and to critique any names or individuals, we should have done it here today, not privately, not behind closed doors. That's all I want to say, and I'm done. And so we can move this forward for the purpose of moving the process forward and for the purpose of moving our city forward, but this is not the end of us critiquing our processes and our own holding up a mirror to us to make sure we're above board. Thank you.
So Mayor, in response to that, if I may, so there's some heavy accusations there in terms of Brown Act. There was no Brown Act violation. I did not disclose to anyone. I just accepted information, received information, and I passed that information along. No decision was made or anything. That's why we're here today. And at the desire of the city council, you can debate this process, these names, at your committee. That's why we're here today. If If the council ever believes that this is a fait accompli, that is not the case on anything. That's why we have public hearings, public comment, public testimony. We heard from members of the public today, somehow they knew who was on the list. It was never made public. I never got a PRA, so I would question, how did members of the public find out if their name was on the list?
It wasn't from me.
I mean, same situation. I have no idea.
Right.
So
I have that concern as well.
And what I'm trying to do is manage a process, keep a schedule that EJ Solutions has committed to people from Chicago and San Diego for a meeting, that all 74, I believe, applicants were communicated to that this is the timeline, will you be available? I think that was part of the process. And so we're here today to keep it online, bring everything out for open, transparent questions, names on the list, names not on the list, and I'd be happy to answer that. But as I said, things were brought to my attention, and when I receive that information, I'm obligated, especially if there's discriminatory commentary, ageist comments, and hostile work environments and hostility, to just bring that and forward that information on.
Yeah, well, can you speak to the comment that you told me about that was made about an individual on our council that said this meeting will not happen unless you do this?
Excuse me?
No,
Okay, then that's fine.
This meeting
There was communication as to, again, what's the purpose of the meeting? What are we doing? It's a special meeting. And so, at the pleasure of individual council members, they can choose whether they would want to attend a meeting, whether it's a special meeting or a notice meeting. I have to have a quorum. And so, at one time, we did not have a quorum for today's meeting. And so working towards, and answering questions, never advising, never anything, just getting information and passing it along. And so that's a danger of having draft documents that are still a work in progress, fast tracking things before it comes to the city council. The report that you have in front of you today is still a draft.
Right. But should that not have come back to the subcommittee and said, hey, we've changed this?
Well, we can. I mean, if
No, I'm talking before.
we didn't have time. If it's a
Okay.
pleasure of the council to say, hey, go back to the subcommittee and rework it, I'm absolutely willing to do that. No problem.
I will just add to that, that we received communications from various parties about various names on the list all throughout that application process. And we took that information under advisement and made our own decisions about how to handle it. So that's just what I would like to say to that.
And I'll add to that, we were not aware of that. We let EJ Solutions move forward and trusted with their process and the work products. There was no influence at all. It was only until this last minute when these things were brought to my attention, and I'm obligated to pass that information on.
I would like to propose council accept the Environmental Justice Solutions Community Committee on Social Equity and Cultural Inclusion report with one slight alteration on the page 3 final plan, just to state that once the plan is adopted, recommendations will be made to the city council as to how to proceed, so that we're not, I don't know what the committee's going to, but I think the way this is currently written is that it's overly suggestive and trying to influence an end game here. So if we can just have that the recommendations would be made from the plan to the council and the community, I would feel better about that.
I'm sorry, Sheena, would you mind repeating that?
Is that like a D on page 3?
Well, so page 3, it says under number 4, upon plan adoption, the Community Social Equity Committee will be dissolved. And then it goes on to say, the city of Millbrae will convene a permanent Social Equity Commission to oversee the implementation and ensure, and legal counsel has advised us too, we would have to change the what? What did he say?
We'd have to add an ordinance.
Right. So if we can, at this point in time here, so we can move everything along here, that once the plan is adopted, recommendations will be made to the city council to either convene, whatever the committee comes up with, to implement the recommendations or the plan, something like that. I think we just need to be a little more open in that discussion, so that we are not inferring some sort of solution, influence or whatever. It just needs to say recommendation there, because we have been told we cannot really establish a new committee without changing the charter or something like that.
If I'm reading here, what you're hoping to change here is the sentence that says, the city of Millbrae will convene a
Right.
permanent social equity commission, blah, blah, blah. Because it
Well,
spells out promising a certain action.
Exactly.
That you think it needs to come back to the council for discussion before that
Yeah.
actually take place.
So.
Which makes
it-
sense.
It would say the city of Millbrae will, evaluate the recommendations to determine whatever, something.
The next step.
Mayor, if I may, just
Yeah.
to help here. And why don't we just simply change that to say that the recommendation of the committee will be presented to the city council for consideration and final adoption.
Exactly.
And then the implementation of that then is the next step,
Uh,
following.
I think that's acceptable.
Because
Is that-
I think it still also depends on what the ad hoc
Right, I
committee
don't know
will
what they're gonna
recommend
come
us
up
to
with.
do. Because
Right.
we don't know yet
They
until
might
the
want
series
more.
of meetings convene.
That is correct. However, EJ Solutions is also a plan writer, and we also have agency in helping to shape how this goes. So that is a recommendation that we put into our project plan and discuss with city staff at the outset of this program. So it's a recommendation that we have right now, that EJ Solutions is recommending as part of the formation of this temporary social equity committee that the city contemplate in the future the founding and establishment of a permanent social equity commission, which would be distinguished from this temporary one. So that is our recommendation at this point. Of course, the committee can come back and say, we don't agree with you, EJ Solutions, and then we would have to deliberate on that. That is true. So I am willing to alter the language of this report slightly to indicate that the committee will influence our recommendations and that we will adopt the recommendations of the committee. But I don't want to remove the agency of EJ Solutions that we have in being the plan writer for the city of Millbrae.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually. When I said recommendation, I think plan is the appropriate terminology there. So not just recommendation, but the plan.
Sure.
Yeah, there's no problem with the plan. It's just, as the attorney said too, we can't change the charter. So if we can just tweak that, I'd like to make that.
No,
motion.
hang
Oh,
on,
go ahead. Sorry,
hang on.
Excuse me.
For the motion. I appreciate the emotion, but hang on to it. Councilman Cahalan and then me. Okay, thank you. Given that I don't believe I ever recommended anybody or said anything to anyone on this, when I read the report, and I've said this multiple times, my greatest concern, and the reason why I supported this initially, is that I believe that Millbrae should be an environmental justice community, which means environmental impacts. And when I read the report, it's great, but it doesn't ever really talk about environment. And when I go out and speak for the city, when I'm at SFO Noise Roundtable, and we are completely ignored by the Federal Aviation Administration, and when the SFO and California High-Speed Rail specifically state in their environmental documents for work doing in Millbrae that we don't have to do XYZ because Millbrae is not an environmental justice community. That is my number one reason for this. I think social equity is obviously needed on that, but my worldview has an environmental aspect of everything. And I didn't see it really reflected in the language. And I'll tell you a story. As one of the early commercial recyclers in the world, we used to just use the word recycling, but it left out reuse, and it left out source reduction, and it left out composting. And the language evolved over time to include all four terms because they're all four specific different actions, different processes, different everything on that. So when you bring the group together, and I will get you some environmental groups to feed you that, and I really have high hopes that maybe you'll bring in the students that are participating in this Environmental Justice Community College project, because they're looking at the world through those eyes. And I just was at their event on Friday, and they're lovely, and learning how to, actually, their concept of the connection of environmental justice and pollution is really good on that. And they are largely children of color on that. So if we could just make sure, because I'm trusting, the problem with the committee of two is that we only come back to council meetings and then we're rushing things through, and I have brought this up every time this has come. But keep in mind that we are controlled by regional agencies who come in and tell us what we get to accept, and they get to ignore a lot of aspects of the work they should be doing because we're not an EJ community. So does that make sense?
Yes, thank you for sharing that information. And I just want to reflect back to you the 17 spheres of social equity that we presented to you on September 26th. Environment and climate is one of those spheres. So we'll be going through all of those spheres of social equity serially to unpack them, learn about them, and define solutions for them.
Okay.
So there absolutely will be a section of this plan that is devoted to the environment and climate.
Thank you. With that, Councilwoman, would you like to make a motion to accept?
I believe
Or a motion to?
Yes. So do we need clarification further? Are we good?
No, I believe I understand
Well, no,
the
no.
revision.
There's no
If I may,
second.
if I
Okay.
may, because this is part of the problem with our organization,
Okay.
our process here is, so there's been a lot of commentary. If that commentary is not made in an official motion, I don't want the expectation of council members to think it's going to get done. So whatever it is that you desire, it must be made in the motion.
Okay. I'm going to make the motion on the assurance that the mayor just got, that the city council accept the Environmental Justice Solutions Committee on Social Equity and Justice Inclusion report. Could you help me on that last little
trying to pull up the
tweak
staff report,
on the, that one paragraph I was concerned about?
Yes, so we will revise the sentence that says the city of Millbrae will convene to discuss that the community committee will make recommendations for the city council's adoption.
That is my motion.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? City manager?
Yeah, I have a question. So again, I think there was a lot of discussion about the, let me get the right terminology.
What I think I heard, city manager, and correct me, I heard
Yeah, yeah.
that we're keeping the sphere,
Mayor, if
Okay,
if
go
I
ahead,
may,
go ahead.
because a lot of this too is talking over me, and if I want to help control this, or not control it, but help facilitate a positive process. So if I'm in, so the identified community anchors, it was brought up and there was discussion for council consideration. The community anchors' comments shall be in writing and must be available to the public. I'll note that anything that we do, we're still going to abide by the law. And so Public Records Act requests, the California law for open, transparent government, that's all something that we will be implementing.
so maker, the motion, do you accept?
I accept that
I accept.
amendment.
Okay, city manager, anything else?
That is it, Mayor.
Okay, before we do the vote, then I just want to clarify. The identified community anchors are staying the same and we can add to them.
Yes.
And perhaps staff can send a note to all of us how we do that. So we're making sure we're doing it the right way on that.
Absolutely.
And that's just my point of clarification. Any further discussion? City clerk, could you call the vote, please?
Councilmember Pappen.
Yes.
Councilmember Cahalan.
Aye.
Councilmember Fung.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Goodman.
Aye.
Mayor Snyder.
Aye.
Item number 2 passed by a vote of 5-0 with 2 minor amendments.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mayor, in closing, I would like to commend Maribel Tobias and Colin Miller from EJ Solutions. As she said, this has been one of the most difficult because of the complexity and the amount of people. So, I mean, they have done a phenomenal job. And so, I trust in them, getting to know their company, very much believe in them, and I'm looking forward to a great process. So my
Very
hat's
good.
off to Maribel and her team, and I'd like to.
And before we adjourn, last night at the San Francisco Airport Roundtable, which sadly, even though our charter includes air pollution, I get pushback from the members that it's only noise. We lost a great advocate for the city of Millbrae. Peter Grace of Brisbane was riding his bicycle over the weekend in Marin and was hit by a car and killed. I bring Peter Grace up as he is a resident of Brisbane, but he was one of my great contacts for giving me technical information on a range of issues. And for all of us who work on airport noise issues, it's just an incredible loss on that. So we're closing in memory of Peter Grace, and to the incoming mayor of Brisbane, Terry O'Connell, our thoughts and prayers to everyone in Brisbane and family. Thank you. Adjourning at 1:41.